Let's say thank you to our camera crews and our AV people who, as volunteers, do really an extraordinary job. I bless you. Thank you so much. Let's take a breath. Let's take another one. Our theme this month is steadfastness. And my topic today is committing to the long haul. Last week we talked about true resilience. And I was explaining that steadfastness should not be confused with stubbornness. That's not what steadfastness is about. Steadfastness is not about digging in your heels and saying, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. I shall not be moved. No. In fact, steadfastness is the opposite. Steadfastness is that capacity to grow, to change, to move, to heal, to transform. Last week we talked about resilience. Today we're going to be talking about committing to the long haul. Today we're talking about how not to drop the ball. Last week was what to do when the ball drops on you. How to get back up. Today we're talking about how not to drop the ball. Committing to the long haul. The reading today was from The Sacred Yes, which is volume 1 of my Letters from the Infinite series, these prophetic messages, and I highly, highly encourage you to read that particular letter. It's one of the shortest letters, so there's no excuse. There's only 3 pages. But I love the way that it explained it. It says that committing to the long haul isn't about this just grind and hauling something around. That committing to the long haul is really more about dropping things along the way. Dropping things, dropping the worries, dropping the cares, the ought-tos, the shoulds, the expectations, the resentments, the timetables, the agendas. Like all these kinds of things that in fact weigh us down. Weigh us down. I love the way that Lao Tzu puts it in the Tao Te Ching, when he says that in the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added in the practice of the Tao. Like living in the oneness of the only thing there is, every day something's dropped. Our spiritual practice is not about taking little old not enough me and adding more stuff to me. It's about understanding great, grand, glorious me and revealing that and letting go of all the stuff that tries to convince me it's anything other than that. See, spirituality is a freedom journey into your own. That's what it's about. And in the letter it explains how when you're committing to the long haul, don't think about all of the circumstances and things that you're going through right now and saying, okay, I'm willing to live with that forever. Because when you make the commitment to the long haul, you have no idea what you're committing to. You have no idea what you are committing to. When you commit to the long haul, you're not committing to the stuff. You're not committing to the way that things are looking. You're committing to be available to whatever shows up. Check the difference. Not, I'm just going to keep showing up for this thing over and over and over again, but I'm going to keep showing up to see what new blessing God has. What new lesson is here. How can I grow? How can I learn? This is committing to the long haul. It's a question of an availability. An availability. Every day. We want to commit to the long haul without being present every day. Listen to what I'm saying. I remember when that particular letter came. And I was so shocked. I've shared this sometimes. When that spirit voice was saying to me, I don't want your commitment. That pissed me off. Because I felt like I had rearranged my whole life just to be committed to God. He said, I don't want your commitment. He said, because your commitment is your promise to show up in the future. I want you here today. Pointing out to me how I had messed up a marriage over that. Oh, I was committed, but I wasn't present. You could have taken it to the bank that I'd have been there forever. But I wasn't present today. And in this letter, it talks about that, how we use that in our marriages, our child rearing. There's always tomorrow. I'll play with you tomorrow. We'll be concerned tomorrow. And Spirit saying, and that's how you do me. There's always tomorrow. I'll get closer to God tomorrow. I'll meditate tomorrow. There's always, this kind of like taking it for granted. He said, you misunderstand commitment. Commitment isn't about tomorrow. That what you call commitment is the series of daily availabilities. It is the accumulation of the daily availabilities that creates the commitment. The commitment without that, in fact, is nothing. What does it take to do this daily availability? What is that about? So I'm teaching Metaphysical Bible right now here in Santa Cruz. There was going to be a mutiny if I didn't do it in Santa Cruz. I've been teaching Bible every place else. But it's been a number of years since I did this kind of interpretive Bible study tools where you really get to learn how to do the interpretations for yourself. And it's on new thought, miracles, and parables. And the whole idea when you're doing these interpretations is that everything stands for consciousness and everything represents you. You're in all of it. We don't study this stuff for old history. We study it for ancient wisdom that is alive. And there's something about the art of storytelling throughout culture and history that helps the message stick. When you can sort of see it live. We were going over the definition in Scripture that Jesus uses for faith. It's the Greek word pistis. Okay? Faith is not blind. There's nothing blind about faith. It is completely the opposite. This pistis has three elements: knowledge of, assent to, and confidence in certain divine truths, especially those that lead to good works. That's the definition of it. Knowledge of, it takes belief. Assent to, which is more than an acceptance. When you give your assent, it's a full-bodied yes. You're not just in agreement, you're moving along with it. See, we can agree with a lot of things. I can say, oh yeah, I agree with that, but that doesn't mean I plan on doing anything. But when you give your assent, you're not just agreeing, you're moving with it. So there's a certain awareness, there's belief, knowledge of, assent to, moving along with it, and confidence in, trust. Trust in divine truth, especially those that lead to good works, because faith without works is dead. When we talk about faith, we're talking about the stuff that leads to good works. And I love that definition because it's a litmus test. I can look at my own life and see, where does it need to be shored up? Do I need more knowledge? Do I need more yes? Or do I need more confidence? For myself, and I would dare say for most of us, it really isn't more knowledge we need. We need a bigger yes, and we need to be able to step out on what we know. That's what we need. So there's a formula in Scripture that Jesus uses when he says, if you believe. And we forget this other part of the formula, and do not doubt. Whatever you ask, you shall receive. You can say to the mountain, move, and it'll be moved. This moved is a change of state or condition. Your acceptance of it as a mountain will shift. But I'm not even going to talk so much about the faith part of it in terms of the steadfastness. It may seem contrary to what we might think, but the real secret to the steadfastness is around this word doubt. So we looked up linguistically, what is the word that's being translated as doubt? I actually regret that the English versions have chosen the word doubt, because it kind of misses the point and skews up what the message is. The definition of the word that is used for doubt literally means to separate thoroughly. That's the word, to separate thoroughly. When we think of doubt as questioning, being unsure, not being completely there. You weren't being asked to do that. You weren't being asked to have more. We're being asked to be faithful to the little you know. Not being asked to understand it all. Because we say, well, how can I have faith? I have all these worries. I have all these concerns. There are all these unknowns. How am I just supposed to have faith in the light of all of that? You're not being asked to know all the unknowns. Nobody is saying, keep at it and keep at it till you don't have any fear, till you don't have any worries, any concerns, or any questions. We think doubt means questioning. And somehow or another, I'm not supposed to question. That's not what's being asked. What's being asked is don't stop. Don't let the questions paralyze you. Don't let the questions take you out of what it is that you already know. Say, you don't need a lot, you need a mustard seed. You don't need a whole lot, you just need a little bit. And whatever that little bit is, step out on that. Hang with that. Use that. I have said 1,000 times, the only thing that ever needs to be healed is what? A sense of separation. I've said it so many times, I don't even have to say it. The only thing that ever needs to be healed is the sense of separation. Any problem you can think of, from the most microscopic personal on up to the most global, it's a sense of separation where we've stepped out of the oneness. We've stepped out of the oneness. We've gotten into dualistic thinking. We've gotten into either or otherness. We've gotten into thinking that the good is somewhere out there, that we don't have it. I don't have the answers. I don't have the health. I don't have the wealth. I don't have the opportunities. I don't have the relationships. I don't. It's the scarcity mentality. It's the lack of limitation consciousness. It's that place of us that keeps convincing ourselves it's not enough. You don't have to know a lot. You don't have to understand everything. But there's a little something that whispers in your soul. It doesn't have to be a 2x4. A whisper's really enough. It's really enough. I encourage you to download iTunes. A whisper is enough. It's the first song Valerie Joy and I ever wrote together. This is before we were even dating. A whisper is enough. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful ballad. It's a spirit letter put to music. Breathe. There's a little word in one of the miracle stories that really struck me. It's a small little word, but the implications of it were so profound around this idea of this steadfastness and not separating from what it is that we already know. So in these stories that we're studying right now, we're studying the story of Simon Peter and Jesus walking on the water. Now, even if you don't know the story, I'm sure you've heard that phrase, oh, he walks on water. Okay. Well, it's from this little story. And in this little story, Jesus and his disciples, which represent like all of our faculties from an archetypical standpoint, straight faith and love and strength and courage and all these things. So they're all out with him on the water. And it says Jesus is walking on the water. And one of the disciples calls out to him, says, I want to come with you. It's faith who calls out to him, represented by Peter. He says, come on out. So they're like hanging out, they're walking on the water. They're doing just fine. Then Peter sees a storm in the distance. It's not even there. He sees a storm in the distance. No. He sees what he perceives as a storm in the distance. He has come to certain conclusions about things that aren't even going on. And then he starts to sink. And Jesus catches him and admonishes him and tells him, be not afraid. Be not afraid. There are 4 times in Scripture that Jesus commands, be not afraid. 3 of them, he's talking to his own disciples. He ain't even talking to the masses. He's talking to his own strength and power and like that stuff that we bring with us. It's like talking to his own self. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. And at the end of this story, I think it's the Luke version, it's quoted as saying that the disciples were amazed at this. It said, because they failed to consider the feeding of the 5,000, because their hearts had become hardened. What it's referring to is that this incident, according to the Scripture, happens right after this miracle event called the feeding of the 5,000. It's the only one that shows up in all the books of the Gospels. That's how important it is. This feeding of the 5,000, where all of these folks have been fed from these few loaves and fish. I'm not even going to go all into that story, but catch what I'm saying here, the magnitude. That in this feeding of the 5,000 story, it's actually the disciples who are the ones feeding the people. We missed that in the story. It's the disciples. There's a blessing But Jesus asked the disciples in the first place to feed them. They thought there wasn't enough. Jesus showed them how there could be enough and made them do the feeding. But they were in fear now. It's because they didn't consider the miracle that had just happened. They separated. They had separated. We do that with our miracles and things, with our steadfastness. We get the blessing here, and then we forget. And we go back into fear. And we get the blessing over here, and we forget. And we go back into fear. And we're always looking for something else, and it never accumulates. It never accumulates. In the sacred yes, in the letter Amazing Grace, it says the only thing that's really amazing about my grace is the fact that you keep putting it off and don't accept it. That's the most amazing thing, because I do this all the time. The most amazing thing is how you fail to put it together. You don't take all of the miracles and all the breakthroughs and all the ways that I show up for you and let it build so you can stand on it. I'm getting a picture now. This old story, and I even got what the whole thing was about it. But basically, it was a donkey that fell into a well. And they couldn't get the donkey out. They didn't know what to do. So just like you shoot a horse with a leg, broken leg, they thought, well, we'll just bury the donkey. So they kept throwing dirt in there on the donkey, trying to bury the donkey. But every time they threw the dirt, the donkey stepped on it and packed it down. So they kept trying to bury the donkey, and the donkey stood on the dirt. They kept piling it on, and he used it like steps. And he just walked on out the well. He shook it off. They poured the dirt on it, he shook it off and stepped on it. That's what we got to do. That's what the steadfastness is. Not, oh, woe is me. Life is restorative. Life is regenerative. They fail to consider. This is my Hebrew-Greek Bible that I use all the time, so you can do the linguistic study. And there's this thing called the lexical aids, which is a little more than a dictionary. It gives you the nuances and whatnot of the words. And the word that's being used for consider, to consider. I love this. It gives you the root words, and it says to bring together. It says when the word is confined to the sphere of mental perception, to consider, mental perception, it means to hear, notice, perceive, recognize, understand, put something together and make sense out of it. Thus, it strictly denotes the collecting together of the individual features of an object into a whole, as collecting the pieces of a puzzle and putting them together. Put the pieces of the puzzle together. Don't separate it out. We don't need to know more. Put together what you know. An example of this, how many of you ever done gratitude journals? We do gratitude journals for this very reason. So we can stop obsessing on trying to get more. And we can stop for a moment and assess what we already have, what we've already seen, what has already been demonstrated. And when you start to look at it as a whole, you get a kaleidoscopic twist in what you see. Suddenly, everything's not lacking limitation. Are you with me? You move away from the not enoughness to a sense of a bounty and a plenty that you just couldn't see before because you weren't considering your own miracles. Because we weren't considering. This steadfastness is committing to the long haul. That's different than committing to every time I'm in trouble, I'm going to use all the principles that I know to try to rub the genie God out the bottle to save my butt. That's not the commitment. The commitment is not to just specific practices. The commitment is not to just specific people. The commitment is never to the stuff. You don't commit to the institutions. There's something beyond that. You commit to the essence of it. Any of you ever been in long-term relationships? Okay. At some point, your commitment to that person ain't enough. You got to be committed even to your commitment. Do you get what I'm saying? You got to be committed to something that's even bigger and greater, and don't separate from it. See? Don't separate from it. Don't move away from what you know. Because as life meanders, there's going to be some bumps. There's going to be some rough spots. Langston Hughes, who's one of the most acclaimed African-American poets of the early 20th century, has a poem called Stairway. I think I remember it. We'll soon see. Sometimes it's called A Letter, Mother to Her Son. I think Mother to Her Son is the actual name of it. Yeah. She says, son, I tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stairway. It's had boards in it, and tacks, and splinters, and places where there ain't been no carpet on the floor. Bare. But all the time, I've been climbing on, reaching landings, turning corners, and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So, boy, don't you sit down on the steps because you see it's getting kind of hard. And don't you fall now, because ours are still going, honey. Ours are still climbing. And life for me ain't been no crystal stairway. Let's sink in for a moment. Don't be anxious about what you don't know. We can't know it. I'm teaching a Friday class in the mornings now on developing our highest potential. And that's not to be confused with just fulfilling our greatest capacity. Because our capacity is what we're capable of. Our capacity is kind of what we already have a sense of that we can do. But your potential is in the unknown. Your potential is in the unknown. And most of us freak out about the unknown. We're taught that risk is too risky. We're taught that like there's something bad about the unknown. But your potential is in the unknown. Your potential, what God can do for you, is in the unknown. What life is going to bring, all of that is in the unknown. And don't ruin your potential consciously trying to develop your capacity. Don't limit your potential to just your capacities, to what you think that you can do. Because when you look out on life, it will look like you don't have enough to do what's before you. You get it along the way. Listen to what I'm saying. You get it along the way. It's like those little stories in the Exodus story. Nobody who lived in captivity made it to the promised land. Only the ones born on the journey. Only the you born on the journey. So here's the good news. You'll have what you need when you need it. Think about your life now. Think about those times that you've had to stretch and you've had to grow. It's incremental. Think about child rearing. Your first child, when they were 3 months, you didn't have the capacities you have when they're 13. He's a new dad again. He got, how old is your baby? 45 days or something like? A month. So he got a new one a month though, so he's laughing. Because we were just talking about how the second one's so different from the first one in terms of what you learn. Are you with me? But if you just step out on what you know, don't poo-poo what you know, don't separate from what you know. And everything that I am saying now on the individual level is true on the societal level. We need to stop freaking out. We need to stop giving so much power to people, places, and things. We need to step out on what we know. Healing happens, but you can't heal what you don't feel. We got to feel some stuff to heal with it, to deal with it so we can heal it. Don't forget what you know. Sometimes when it looks like it's bad, it's for your healing. So you can get the strength to get on the other side of it. So you can unveil the you that's really there so that you can reveal it, because it's more about dropping than it is about adding on. Now is a time in this collective consciousness for us to stand on what we know. Change happens. Truth crushed the earth will rise and rise again. The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. We got to stand in what we know unwaveringly. And you know what happens? It multiplies. It multiplies. Just like fear multiplies, faith multiplies. Courage multiplies. We lift each other up. We support each other up. I want to encourage you. to just stand in what you know. It doesn't have to be a lot. That little bitty mustard seed is the strongest weed in the world. That mustard seed grows. It grows fast. It grows strong. You cannot get rid of it. It is the bane of gardeners. It gobbles up everything in the garden. Just a little bit will take over your life if you don't separate.